I'm giving thanks to God this morning that the air conditioning is working in our church. It was about a month ago that I met Karen when I was sitting on a little retaining wall that we had in the front of our house. We had both just gotten off of work, and Karen was good that day. She had ridden her bike to work. I felt rather lazy that day, and I had driven my car. So I got home before she did, and I was waiting for her because I had to share some bad news with her. So she pulled up into the driveway. I was like, oh man, this is going to really happen. So she came up to me and she said, well, how was your day? And I looked at her and I'm like, well, I think I need to go buy a new watch. And Karen's like, really? Again? I'm like, yes, again. And she's like, well, what happened this time? So earlier that day, I had been sitting in my office here at the church, diligently working on sermon preparation, or being distracted by a YouTube video involving cats. I noticed that there was a vehicle parked on the bottom of our driveway, and it was a vehicle that looked like it had a flat tire. Now, it's common for me, as I'm driving along, that if I see someone on the side of the road having some sort of distress with their vehicle, I stop and see if I can be of any assistance. Which is absolutely hilarious because I know absolutely nothing about cars. But I stopped nonetheless. So I noticed that this car had been sitting down there for a while, and it was towards the end of the day, and if you are ever by this intersection at the end of the day, you know it can be kind of a busy intersection. There's people who are speeding on Country Club Road trying to avoid the traffic on Highway 14 to get home to Byron, to do what people in Byron do in the evenings, which I assume is the same thing as people in Rochester, but I don't know. There's lots of traffic around Circle Drive, and I saw cars passing this other car, so I thought, hey, I'll be a nice guy, I'll walk down there and see what's going on. So I walked down there, and it was a woman, and she did indeed have a flat tire, and she had just decided that she was going to open her trunk and get out her jack and try to remove the tire. I said, well, can I help you with that? Because if there's anything I know about cars, it's how to fix flat tires. She's like, sure, I would really appreciate the help. So I got out her jack and we lifted up the car. And it was kind of an older car, so as I was trying to get the lug nuts off the tire wrench slipped and it cracked the glass on my fancy watch. Right? And she felt horrible about it. No big deal, whatever. So we fixed her tire, and she's like, thank you so much for doing this. Can I offer you any money for helping me? I'm like, no, you don't have to offer me anything. She's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, I'm absolutely sure, but if you want to repay me, what you can do is go visit those people up on the top of the hill at that church. They're really, really great people. And she said, how do you know? And I'm like, well, they teach me things all the time, so you should just come someday. She hasn't come back. So I kind of explained this to Karen that I needed a new watch. And she's like, well, this seems to always happen to you. I'm like, well, it does happen frequently. And I want to explain why. When I was in seminary, part of our seminary education is to be an intern. You know about the intern program, but because we've had interns here. But my internship happened at a church in Southern Maryland, and that church happened to be named Good Samaritan Lutheran Church. And thinking about what I wanted to share with you this week about this parable, I came to a realization that my time in that congregation really had a profound impact on me. Because that church was aptly named, just as our congregation is. I view you as a very hope-filled people who go out into the world and share God's hope with people. The people at Good Samaritan did the same thing, but really lived out this parable of the Good Samaritan. They knew of someone in their community that was going through a difficult time. The community would rally together and really do all they could to support that person. And that was a life-changing kind of experience for me. And ever since this parable of the the Good Samaritan has had a special place in my heart. Whenever it comes up in the lectionary cycle, I get excited about how I'm going to preach it this time. And I've preached sermons about the Levite and the Pharisee and how we can all identify with them. I preached a sermon about the innkeeper one time, about welcoming people in and helping to take care of them. I preached a sermon about being the dude in the ditch and about how we're called sometimes to accept the care of others when we're going through difficult times. I preached about the Samaritan and being the unexpected blessing in other people's lives. So there's plenty of preaching avenues to go with this parable. But this week, I was especially moved by one word in that parable. It's about 2/3 of the way through. It's after we get the account of the religious folks crossing the road to avoid the situation we have. Then we have the Samaritan who happens upon the man who has been robbed. And it says that the Samaritan saw this person in the ditch and had pity on him. I was really interested by that word pity. Because when I think of showing someone pity, I don't think about that being action-oriented. When I feel like I have pity on someone, I think about it being as empathetic, right? Like they're going through a difficult time, and man, I'm so sorry they're going through a difficult time. Now I'm going to go eat my burrito, right? So I actually spent time, and I don't do this very often, parsing the Greek word that is translated as pity in our reading today. And it took me an hour and a half for one word. And the Greek word here is splotmimosai. Okay? Can you say that with me? Splotmimosai. Right? Oh, come on. It's such a fun word to say. Splotmimosai. Okay. I guess that's all the energy I'm going to get about that word this morning, but that's okay. Splotmimosai is in this passage translated as pity, but a more apt translation would be compassion. And not just compassion, but in the ancient Near East, or the time when Jesus lived, it was believed that this idea of compassion and love came from the gut. And I love the world so much, that's why I have such a big gut. But it was believed that love came from the gut. Some Greek scholars say it came from the bowels of the person. So that when the Samaritan saw the robber at the side of the road, he was so gut-wrenched by a feeling of love for him, he had to stop and act. And when I think about that, I think about God's calling for us to be compassionate people in the world. Right? That it's not just enough to have pity, but God calls us to be empathetic and then to use us to help stop the suffering. Right? Which is how I want to define compassion this morning. And I got to thinking about Jesus in this, because I often like to think about the Samaritan being Jesus, and all the times in the gospel narratives, when Jesus sees someone suffering, and whether Jesus shows pity or shows compassion. And for me, Jesus always shows compassion. Right? He sees the blind man, and he doesn't say, oh, I feel really sorry that the blind man can't see. No, Jesus acts and spits in the mud and rubs it in the guy's eyes, and then all of a sudden the blind man can see. Right? When Lazarus dies, Jesus just doesn't go to the tomb. Sure, he cries and is upset that Lazarus is dead, but it doesn't stop there. Jesus has compassion and acts, and Lazarus is raised from the dead. But the woman who's been hemorrhaging for years and years and years, Jesus doesn't say, I'm so sorry that you've been hemorrhaging, but get out of my way. I got other things to do. No. Instead, the woman is healed. When Jesus is in the boat with the disciples and they wake him up because the winds are blowing, Jesus doesn't say, calm down, sit down, everything's going to be okay. No, Jesus, being woken up from sleep and being inconvenienced, says, no, winds, die down. Don't be afraid. And the storm is ceased. Right? Over and over in the Gospels, Jesus sees someone who is afflicted by something, and Jesus stops what he is doing. And instead of ignoring the need that's in front of him, he becomes inconvenienced and does a healing or does a miracle. Just like the Samaritan who was traveling on the road and sees the man near death lying in the ditch. The Samaritan had every right just to pass him by. The Samaritan was despised, devalued, not seen as worthy. But the Samaritan stops and acts and shows compassion. I think what this parable is all about is Jesus telling us to be people who live out in the world with compassionate hearts. And it's very interesting that this text came up in the lectionary cycle today. I actually had a little chuckle with God about that this morning. This day, as our government is working to deport undocumented people, this day, as it has been reported that people on the border are being treated like animals instead of human beings, this day, when we can be filled with turmoil and be upset and say, I feel so sorry for people, and not do anything about it, as we enjoy our privilege as people who are comfortable. I think it's important to recognize that in a world that is broken, pity doesn't cut it anymore. In a world that is broken, compassion is called. That if we see someone hurting, we need to be inconvenienced and step out and act. It's risky behavior. There's no doubt about it. But I don't follow a God or believe in a God who doesn't call me to take risks. Right? So, I guess what I'm trying to say is I hope that we continue to be as a people of faith here at People of Hope, people who act out of compassion, who see a need in the world and do our very level best to address that need. And I'm going to work at my best to enable you to do that. In fact, over the next couple months, don't be alarmed if you get a random email from me or a random phone call asking out for a cup of coffee, and I simply want to ask you what you're passionate about. What's a need in the world that you feel like you want to address? And what I want to do is then enable you to address that need or live out that passion in the world. And if I don't know how to enable you to do it, I'm going to find someone who does. So we can all walk in the shoes of the compassion of Jesus Christ. So, brothers and sisters in Christ, let's engage in a life of risky behavior that is all about compassion. Let us not be afraid to step out into the world when we see a brother or sister in need and say, I can do something about that. Even though it might cause me to be a bit inconvenienced, I'll stop and I'll journey with you and I'll help you the best that I can. Because if we're honest with ourselves, we have to recognize that our model for compassion is compassionate towards us all the time. We are broken people who need to feel the benefit of compassion. And that's why Jesus is, and Jesus was, and Jesus will ever be. So let us be bold in stepping out in the way of Jesus and acting out our compassion in the world. Let us be bold in sharing God's love with other people. Let us be bold in everything that we do. Thanks be to God. Amen.